The night was heavy with rain as Marcus Tate, a 38-year-old black man, drove through the quiet streets of Oak Ridge. His sleek sedan hummed softly, the radio playing jazz to soothe his nerves after a long day. Marcus, a sharply dressed man with a calm demeanor, was headed home to his wife and daughter. But as he turned onto Main Street, blue lights flashed in his rearview mirror, slicing through the downpour. Two white officers, Jenkins and Malone, approached his car, their faces stern under dripping hats. "Step out, sir!" Jenkins barked, hand on his holster. Marcus complied, hands raised, his heart pounding. "What's this about?" he asked, voice steady despite the chill of fear. Malone smirked. "You fit the description of a suspect." Without explanation, they cuffed him, ignoring his protests, and shoved him into the squad car. At the precinct, Marcus sat in a cold interrogation room, his suit now wrinkled, cuffs biting his wrists. Jenkins leaned across the table, sneering. "We know you're involved in that robbery downtown. Save us time and confess." Marcus's jaw tightened. He'd spent his life fighting stereotypes, yet here he was, presumed guilty for existing. "I'm not your guy," Marcus said, his voice firm. "Check my ID, call my office." Malone scoffed, tossing Marcus's wallet onto the table. "Fancy lawyer, huh? Doesn't mean you're clean." They left him there, alone, as the clock ticked past midnight. Marcus closed his eyes, picturing his daughter, Lila, waiting for her bedtime story. He vowed to get home to her. Marcus was allowed one call, and he dialed his wife, Simone. Her voice, warm but worried, answered. "Marcus, where are you?" He explained, keeping his tone calm to ease her fears. "It's a misunderstanding, love. I'll be home soon." Simone's silence spoke volumes. She knew these misunderstandings too well. "I'm calling our lawyer," she said, her voice hardening. Marcus nodded, though she couldn't see. "Tell Lila I love her," he added softly. As he hung up, the weight of the night settled on him. He wasn't just fighting for himself, but for every black man judged before proven. His resolve hardened. He'd turn this around. Days later, Marcus stood in a courtroom, his suit pristine again, but his eyes weary. The charges, resisting arrest and suspicion of robbery, were flimsy, but the officer's testimony loomed large. Jenkins and Malone, in crisp uniforms, spun a tale of Marcus's aggressive behavior and suspicious loitering near the crime scene. The gallery, mostly white, nodded along. Marcus's lawyer, Rachel Nguyen, fought hard, pointing out inconsistencies, but the judge, Harold Grayson, a stern older man, seemed swayed by the officers. Marcus watched, his heart sinking. He knew this game. The system often protected its own. Yet, he sat tall, his gaze steady, hiding a secret that could change everything. Simone sat in the gallery, gripping Lila's hand. At 10, Lila didn't fully grasp the stakes, but her wide eyes mirrored her mom's worry. Simone whispered, "Daddy's strong, baby. He'll be okay." Inside, she burned with anger. Marcus had built a life of integrity, yet here he was on trial for nothing. She glanced at the officers, their smug expressions fueling her resolve. Simone had already contacted Marcus's colleagues, planting seeds for what was to come. She knew her husband wasn't just a lawyer. He was a U.S. attorney, a federal prosecutor with power few in this room could imagine. She waited, trusting his plan. Judge Grayson leaned forward, his gavel poised. "Based on the officer's credible testimony," he began, "I'm inclined to uphold the charges." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Rachel objected, citing lack of evidence, but Grayson waved her off. "Order!" he snapped, his eyes flicking to Marcus with subtle disdain. Marcus felt the sting of that look, a reminder of countless slights. But he stayed composed. His hands clasped. He'd seen judges like Grayson before, men who saw guilt in his skin before his story. Yet Marcus knew the truth was his weapon, and he was ready to wield it. His eyes met Simone's, a silent promise. Rachel turned to Marcus, whispering, "Your turn." He stood, buttoning his jacket, his presence commanding. "Your Honor, may I address the court?" Grayson frowned but nodded. Marcus's voice was clear, resonant. "I've sat silently, listening to lies about my character, but I'm not just a defendant. I'm a man with a story." He recounted the night, his drive home, the sudden stop, the cuffs. "I complied fully," he said, his gaze locking with Jenkins. "Yet I was treated like a criminal." The gallery stirred, some leaning forward. Grayson's expression didn't soften, but Marcus wasn't done. He was building to something bigger. Jenkins and Malone exchanged glances, unfazed. They'd testified in dozens of cases, their word rarely questioned. Jenkins leaned back, arms crossed, whispering to Malone, "He's digging his own grave." They believed the judge was theirs, the system theirs. Marcus's eloquence didn't scare them, yet. In the gallery, a young black man, Jamal, recorded the hearing on his phone, live streaming to his followers. "This is what we face," he captioned. The stream was gaining traction, comments flooding in. Outside the courtroom, Marcus's story was already sparking outrage, though he didn't know it yet. Marcus paused, letting his words settle. Then, with a steady voice, he dropped the bomb. "Your Honor, I'm not just a lawyer. I'm Marcus Tate, U.S. Attorney for the Southern District." Gasps erupted. Grayson's gavel froze mid-air. Jenkins and Malone paled, their confidence shattered. "I prosecute corruption, fraud, and abuse of power," Marcus continued, his eyes boring into the officers. "And I know when testimony is fabricated." He pulled a folder from Rachel's briefcase, holding it up. "This contains evidence of my whereabouts that night. GPS data, security footage, and witness statements proving I was nowhere near that robbery." The gallery exploded in whispers, phones buzzing as spectators texted the news. Grayson banged his gavel, shouting, "Order!" But his face betrayed shock. Simone smiled, squeezing Lila's hand. She'd known Marcus would wait for the perfect moment, and he'd delivered. Jenkins stood, red-faced. "He's lying!" But Malone grabbed his arm, hissing, "Sit down!" Rachel seized the moment, submitting Marcus's evidence to the court. "This proves my client's innocence and questions the officer's credibility," she said. Grayson's eyes narrowed, but he accepted the folder, adjourning to review. In chambers, Grayson pored over Marcus's evidence. GPS logs showed his route home, far from the crime scene. Security footage from a gas station captured his car minutes before the stop. A neighbor's affidavit confirmed seeing Marcus pull into his driveway post-arrest. The case against him crumbled. Grayson's jaw tightened. He'd nearly ruled against a U.S. attorney based on bias and shaky testimony. He knew the fallout would be brutal. Media, protests, maybe his career. He returned to the bench, his face grim, knowing he had to tread carefully now. Outside, Jamal's live stream had gone viral, racking up millions of views. Hashtags like #Justice for Marcus and #End Police Lies trended. News vans rolled up, reporters clamoring for interviews. Simone shielded Lila from the chaos, but her heart swelled. Marcus's fight was now the world's. Inside, Marcus remained calm, unaware of the storm online. He whispered to Rachel, "This isn't just about me." She nodded, knowing his goal, to expose systemic flaws. The evidence was airtight, but Marcus wanted more. Accountability for Jenkins and Malone. Grayson cleared his throat. The courtroom hushed. "After reviewing the evidence," he said, "all charges against Mr. Tate are dismissed." Cheers erupted. Simone hugged Lila, tears streaming. Marcus exhaled, relief washing over him, but his eyes stayed on the officers. However, Grayson continued, the officer's conduct raises concerns. I'm referring this matter to internal affairs. Jenkins's face fell. Malone stared at the floor. Marcus nodded slightly. A small victory. But he knew internal affairs often protected cops. He'd need to push harder. In the precinct locker room, Jenkins slammed his fist into a locker. That guy played us! Malone, quieter, shook his head. He's untouchable now. They knew their careers were at risk, but Jenkins wasn't ready to back down. We'll find a way to hit back, he muttered. Unbeknownst to them, Marcus's team at the U.S. Attorney's Office was already digging into their records. Complaints of excessive force, racial profiling, and falsified reports surfaced. Marcus wasn't just defending himself, he was building a case against them. At home, Marcus sat with Simone and Lila, the weight of the day lifting as Lila showed him her latest drawing. A superhero version of him. He laughed, hugging her tight. But later, alone with Simone, his face grew serious. I'm going after them, he said. Not just for me, but for everyone they've hurt. Simone nodded, her hand on his. I'm with you, but be careful. Marcus knew the risks, powerful enemies, threats to his family. Yet, as a prosecutor, he'd faced cartels and corrupt officials. 2 rogue cops wouldn't stop him. He began compiling evidence, his mission clear. The next day, a rally formed outside the courthouse, led by activists inspired by Marcus's story. Signs read, Tate for Truth, and No More Lies. Jamal spoke, his voice booming. Marcus Tate showed us the system can't silence us. The crowd roared, their energy infectious. Marcus and Simone attended, Lila on his shoulders. He spoke briefly, his words measured but powerful. This fight isn't over. We demand justice, not just for me, but for all. The crowd chanted his name, and Marcus felt a surge of purpose. He was no longer alone. Flashback to Marcus's youth in a rough Chicago neighborhood. Raised by a single mom, he dodged gangs and prejudice, finding refuge in books. A mentor, a black lawyer, saw his potential, guiding him to law school. Use your mind to change the world, she'd said. That promise drove Marcus to the U.S. Attorney's Office, where he prosecuted injustice with relentless precision. But the arrest reminded him. No title shielded him from bias. As he reflected, his resolve deepened. He'd honor his mentor by dismantling the system's flaws, starting with Jenkins and Malone. Marcus's team uncovered a pattern. Jenkins and Malone had targeted Black and Latino drivers, fabricating charges to meet quotas. Whistleblowers came forward, including a rookie cop, Officer Chen, who'd overheard them boast about teaching lessons. Chen's testimony was gold, but she feared retaliation. Marcus met Chen in a secure location, promising protection. You're doing the right thing, he said. Her nod was firm, but her eyes nervous. Marcus knew the stakes. Exposing corruption meant facing a brotherhood that closed ranks. He prepared for war, his legal arsenal ready. Late one night, Marcus's phone buzzed with an anonymous text. Back off or your family pays. His blood ran cold. He checked on Lila, sleeping soundly, and Simone, reading in bed. He didn't show her the threat, but tightened security, hiring a private detail. Simone sensed his tension. What's wrong? She pressed. Marcus confessed, his voice low. Her face hardened. They don't scare us, she said, fierce. Finish this. Marcus nodded, their partnership unbreakable. He knew the threats, and he was close to the truth. Marcus strategically leaked the investigation to a major outlet, ensuring public scrutiny. The story broke. U.S. attorney targets rogue cops after wrongful arrest. Details of Jenkins and Malone's complaints painted them as predators. Protests swelled. The city divided. Some hailed Marcus, others vilified him. Jenkins and Malone were cornered. Jenkins, reckless, proposed framing Marcus for misconduct, but Malone hesitated. He's too clean. They met a shady contact, ex-cop turned fixer, who promised to handle Marcus for a price. The deal was struck, but Chen, now wired, recorded it. The recording reached Marcus, a game changer. He played it for his team, their faces grim but determined. "This is our slam dunk," he said, his voice steady. The trap was closing, but Marcus knew desperation made men dangerous. He stayed vigilant, his family under guard. Marcus arranged a sting, luring Jenkins to a meeting with the fixer. FBI agents, tipped by Marcus, swooped in, cuffs clicking. Jenkins cursed, realizing he'd been played. Malone cut a deal, spilling everything. Years of abuse, cover-ups, even Jenkins's plan to target Marcus. In a safe house, Marcus faced Malone, his eyes cold. "You ruined lives," he said. Malone looked broken, muttering, "I'm sorry." Sorry wasn't enough for Marcus. He wanted reform, policies, training, justice. This one arrest was his catalyst. The grand jury convened, Marcus presenting the case against Jenkins. Evidence piled high, recordings, witnesses, reports. Chen testified, her voice steady despite fear. The jurors, diverse and attentive, nodded as Marcus connected the dots. "This is about power abused," he said. Simone watched from the gallery, proud but weary. Lila, at home, drew another picture, Marcus with a gavel, her faith in him unshaken. The jury's indictment came swiftly, a rare win against officers. Marcus exhaled, knowing the trial would be the real test. Jenkins's trial was a spectacle. Media swarmed the courthouse. His defense painted him as a hero targeted by a vindictive prosecutor. But Marcus's evidence was relentless. Chen's tape, victims' stories, Malone's confession. The gallery, now mixed, leaned forward, gripped by the drama. Marcus took the stand, recounting his arrest, his voice raw. "I was a citizen, stripped of dignity," he said, his eyes on the jury. "How many didn't have my voice?" A juror wiped a tear, her nod subtle. Marcus knew he'd pierced their hearts. After tense deliberation, the jury convicted Jenkins of multiple counts: false arrest, perjury, conspiracy. The courtroom erupted. Grayson, presiding again, looked chastened, his sentence firm. Malone, pleading guilty, received leniency for cooperating. Justice felt tangible, but Marcus wanted lasting change. Marcus leveraged the verdict to push reforms, body cams, bias training, stricter oversight. The mayor, under pressure, signed them into law, citing the Tate case as a wake-up call. Activists cheered, but Marcus knew laws needed enforcement. He committed to monitoring progress. At a community forum, he spoke, surprising him. "My dad fought for us," Lila said, holding his hand. The crowd stood, applauding. Marcus hugged her, tears in his eyes. His fight had given his daughter a voice, a legacy he cherished. Despite victory, hate mail flooded Marcus's office, some threatening. A protest by pro-police groups targeted him, chanting, "Tate's a traitor." Security tightened, but Marcus refused to hide. "Fear won't stop me," he told Simone, his voice resolute. Simone, his rock, organized a counter-rally, drawing thousands. "We stand with Marcus," they chanted. The show of support humbled him. He spoke, vowing to continue. "This is our fight," he said, his voice echoing. The crowd roared, their unity his shield. A filmmaker approached, proposing a documentary on Marcus's journey. He agreed, seeing it as a platform to amplify others' stories. Filming began, capturing his work, his family, the movement. Victims of Jenkins and Malone shared their pain, their voices raw. The documentary premiered to acclaim, sparking global conversations. Marcus and Simone watched, Lila between them, proud. "You're my hero, Daddy," she whispered. Marcus kissed her forehead, his heart full. His fight had reached millions, its impact undeniable. Years later, Marcus's reforms reshaped policing, reducing profiling incidents. He mentored young lawyers, passing his torch. Lila, now a teen, spoke at rallies, her art advocating justice. Simone led a nonprofit, supporting victims. Their family was a beacon. At a ceremony honoring Marcus, he reflected. "I was arrested for being black," he said, "but I fought for being human." The crowd stood, tears flowing. His story wasn't just his. It was Marcus stood at Oak Ridge's community center, renamed Tate Justice Hub, unveiling a mural by Lila, diverse faces united. The crowd cheered, their hope palpable. He hugged Simone and Lila, his anchors. "We did this together," he said, his voice thick. As the sun set, Marcus looked out, jazz playing softly in his mind. The road ahead was long, but he'd walk it, with his family, his community, his truth. His arrest had sparked a movement, and its fire would burn bright, inspiring generations.